Hopefully. All right. We are live with the live coding happy hour for November 4th, 2016. Hopefully, fingers crossed, our latency issues that have plagued us in recent weeks will be gone. We'll know in a couple seconds whether or not that's the case. I am Dave Slusher, developer evangelist with ServiceNow in the platform business unit. And Chuck, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow in the platform practice team. I am a platform architect.
And I'm Josh Nerius. I'm a developer evangelist, also in the platform development business unit, working with Dave.
All right. We looks like our streaming. We've tested. I don't know how many times we do this. 10 times. We tested to figure out how to reduce the latency. I think it's good. It looks like we're up and live and running. So, with that said, I'm now going to enjoy my fine Dale's Pale Ale from Oscar Blues.
Oh, I had one of those. Those are very good.
Putting it in my knockoff koozie right now.
Go ahead, Josh.
I'm going to go this week with the tried and true Lagunitas IPA. Can't really go wrong.
And I am tonight's designated driver. I am going with good old-fashioned water because I am under medication that does not go well with alcohol.
And
that's a good choice.
Yeah, Chuck was saying he's looking forward to the time change when it'll actually be 2:30 when we do these. So
you all change your clock. You're crazy, but it works in my advantage this time around.
Gets a little friendlier for him. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. We're going to go right into it. I'll share the screen, and let me remember to lock it on myself. And what I'm going to be doing this time is I am wanting to do something a little more integration-y. So Josh does a lot of integration work, and I think, Chuck, you've probably done a fair bit of it.
Yep.
I haven't done that much web service integration, so it's a thing that I kind of want to do for myself. And I have a pet project. So the artifact manager that Josh showed his Bitly integration with was one of his pet projects, and I have a pet project which is this travel tracker. So I have a lot of things I want it to do, but one of the kind of basic things is that I want it to be able to do some organization of travel itineraries and some grouping of flights. So I want to be able to do things like, say, multiple people are flying, ending in the same point. We're going to share a ride. However, we want to know if something goes amiss with somebody's flight. So not unlike what you might have in TripIt or something like that. But I want to incorporate that in our platform so that it integrates with everything else about this. And so ultimately, I want to have like an in and out board where, you can look at the calendar and see where people are at given points in time. But
sure.
One of the things I want to do now is I've got this, basically, let me get it down to just the travel tracker. So I've got a few simple objects in here now. So I've got basically airports, I've got flights and places. So I have basically like the travel tracker place, which just is a decorator on the CMN location. You can't extend it in a baseline instance. It's configured to not be extensible. And I decided I didn't actually want this thing. I didn't want, if anybody else ever uses this, I didn't want the first thing you have to do is go and change a core configuration and make a table extensible. So in fact, what this is just a decorator. All it does is adds a few things, but it also has a reference to a location. So your standard platform location. So with all that said, let's look at the flight table. So I have this thing. I'm actually extending it off this other thing I called generic schedule, and I'm not really going to talk about that, but it's just a scheduler that's not quite so ITIL specific as the one that's built into the platform.
Dave, can you make your font just a wee bit bigger?
Absolutely, I surely can. All right. So now the key things that we're going to look at here is we've got a start time and an end time of the flight. So we're talking specifically about a flight. We've got the actual end time and the actual start time. We've got a flight number, and this would be the thing that you see in your, your Concur thing. So basically this over here, 6031, American Airlines 6031. That's that thing.
Does it include the airline designator? Or
it is. It would be like AA. It would be like AA 6031.
Gotcha.
Then there's a thing over here, and so I don't know if I mentioned it by name. FlightAware is what we're using, and as far as I know, this is the source of all real-time flight data anywhere. Like anything you look at, I believe, is actually ultimately coming from this API. It is also not a free API. So it's pretty cheap, like on the order of, I think it has different classes of calls. The ones that we're using, I think, are mostly like fractions of a penny per call, but they are not, it's not zero. So that is a thing to be aware of. So we've got that. We've got so FlightAware has a unique identifier, which is different from this. Interestingly enough, the flight number is not only reused every day, but it's actually even reused the same day. And I never knew this. Like I was joking with the guys beforehand that the airline industry data structures are they're very wacky to me, but I'm getting a crash course in them. So like flight 6031 exists. There are 2 flights with that number today. Between one is San Diego to Los Angeles and one is Los Angeles to San Diego. So
it's it's the same plane that goes up. It continues on.
Right, but so it's the same number. It's not a different number coming back. And so that whole thing where they ask you what your origin is, that's because by itself, the unique identifier is the day, the flight number, and the origin. So you won't have 2 flights with the same, same origin and the same number on the same day. So this strikes me as odd. So FlightAware, what they what FlightAware does is they have an actual unique identifier. Another thing, and I'm going to ask you guys some advice in the middle of this. We'll talk about this a little bit. Boy, are there a lot of time zone issues in this application. My goodness, because all your flights are always in local time, and your instance is in instance time, and the API is in UTC. So, yeah. So you have, for this example, I'm doing LA to San Diego flights, which is the same time zone that my instance is in. So
it's simple for first pass.
Be aware that is not at all necessarily the case, right? It's very, very commonly you're going to be in different time zones at either end of it, and they're going to be different. All the time zones will be different from your instance, and they'll all be different from UTC. So this is a to-do for the future. We're not doing it today. It's already driven me crazy up to this point. So what we've got now, I did just a little bit of stuff. There's a business rule and some. Let me go ahead and open the script include. I held off on the tasty work because I wanted to actually do it here live. I did a little bit of work so that I can populate this unique identifier. So I pass it the flight number, the day, and the origin, and it makes a call. It makes a call to that API to get a list of the flights. Now, there is a way you can basically say, give me the identifier, give me the info for a specific flight. Now, the thing about that is you have to have the time exactly correct. If you are off 1 second in the UTC, it will not return it. So what I do instead is I basically ask it for, I give it the unqualified, I say, look for this flight number, and I don't tell it what day. And then I loop through the JSON, and I do a little stuff here to look for ones on the day that I'm looking for. So this is kind of ugly, and this is a strong candidate for refactoring in the future. But what I'm doing now is I'm looping over all the returns from that until I find, down here, a departure date and an origin that match what I'm looking for, at which point I have found my unique identifier. So I've got a workflow. And the other thing about this, again, in all the weirdness of this only goes about 2 days ahead of time. So if you get a flight in 2 months, you can't get this flight ID until very close to the time of the actual flight. So I've got to work.
Thing?
I think that the API just doesn't like populate and generate all this stuff, that far ahead.
I think there also might actually be some FAA limitations on how early that data is available. There's some weird sort of regulatory stuff associated with all of this too.
Yeah, all these things are. I'm sure all these things are in play. So what I've got is a workflow that actually waits on a condition of it being about 2 days before this flight, and then it populates this ID.
Okay. So
I've got that now. So you'll notice in here I've been testing it today. So we've got some that are, I've actually put some in the future, like this one should go in like about 2 hours. This one should populate. So what we've got is some flights that I have set up, and they've got the flight ID populated. Now let me show you over here in classic cooking show stuff. Previously, I think even when we were all in San Diego, I was experimenting with this. And you guys need that bigger? This is the JSON that comes back. There's a webhook call. Let me actually show you the call itself, where you can say, where you set an endpoint, register alert endpoint, and you say, okay, FlightAware, here's my endpoint. Here's my endpoint. When you have any status change, I want to know. So you register an endpoint that says, here's my URL. That's the callback. And then you can say, I want to set an alert on any of these things. This, this flight ID or this origin or this aircraft type or whatever. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff you could say. You could say, I want to know every time a 737 takes off. You could do that. And then it will call your endpoint. So
is this the method that, like, Tripcase, for example, would alert me if there's a flight change?
I am almost certain that is. Date. Yeah, I'm almost certain. I can't tell you for a fact, but I have a strong suspicion that that's exactly where all that comes from. I think, like we said, I think this is the single source of that data, like in the world. So okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to build out the endpoint for this, and we'll see how far we get. Ideally, like the best case scenario would be we get this do a scripted REST API to accept this data, and then can actually like register an endpoint and sign up and kind of watch it happen while we're sitting here. We may not make it that far, but step one, we're going to create the scripted REST API to build this. I do love me a good scripted REST API.
Scripted REST APIs are the best. They really are. I actually emailed somebody about that the other day. They had a thing come up, and I said, try a scripted REST API. And their comment was, they really can do anything, can't they? And for the most part, they're pretty crazy powerful.
All right. So this is already scoped to my travel tracker. The hardest part of the thing, get status change.
Or maybe like a handle, maybe handle.
Whoa! I'm not doing the resource. I'm naming the API.
Oh, the API.
Let's just say, what am I naming the overall API? I should have thought of this ahead of time.
FlightAware handler, FlightAware something. I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
Let's just call it FlightAware.
Because it kind of turns the whole idea. When you think about integrations, you're usually talking about reaching out to something, and this turns everything back.
We'll just call it FlightAware. Yeah, FlightAware integration. That's good enough. That works. Because I do kind of want to make it obvious that this is the only thing that would really make sense for this is FlightAware, right? Because nothing else is going to be sending the same JSON the same way. So then let's create a resource for this thing, and let's say accept status or get. I'll say accept status.
Yeah, because get would almost imply that you're doing something.
Yeah, that's exactly why I started to use get and then changed my mind.
That makes sense.
Accept status. Get method. Do I want it? Oh, let's 1 second. Do I want that? Is that a get, or is that a post? Each alert. This might be a post.
So you're asking if they're gonna post it to me. I believe this is probably got to be. It's got to be a post.
They've got to. So let's make this a post. Accept status. All right, and then let's just do a little bit of boiler. The request.body, and I'm going to do this. Partly because we may be adding a lot of logging. I don't know. This is a stylistic thing. You guys tell me about this. I notice that I do this a lot now. Is I assign things to variables that you don't have to. You could just do the direct thing. But I actually kind of like the way it sort of self-documents when you do that. It's not as if you're costing yourself, like one cycle in the, you're not costing a lot of processing time, and it actually makes the code significantly more readable to me.
My scales usually tip when it comes to, am I using this more than once? If I type request.body twice, throw it in the gap.
Status equals.
We have some comments from the chat while you're typing. So Jace had mentioned FlightAware input, and Nabil said FlightAware hook. So lots of options there.
All right. I'm actually okay with all those, but I think this is good enough for right now. But I do appreciate the help, guys. All right. So status, JSON parse. And then I'm going to pull this back over here where we can see it. Let's get.
Do you need global.json parse because you are in a scoped app?
Possibly. Let's try that. Tell you what, let's do it without and see.
Yeah, I think there might be a scope version, so you might be okay.
I think that it might be all right. I agree that it's worth a try. All right, so we want to get actual departure time.
Looks like there's some meta characters in them. I'm seeing some back.
That's for the long description. Actually has has new line, like encoded new lines in it. Which we can actually use. Let's go ahead and get that. Let's get the long description. We'll just use it for logging. So let's get a long description.
Oh,
Val.
You missed.
You would think I had been drinking. Yeah, I got it. I'll get it here in a second.
You think
I had a complaint. And what are you complaining about? Assignment or var? A lot of the.
No, stat. Oh, well, val is good too, but stats is an unknown object at this point.
Did I make 4 typos in one line? This might be a record. All right.
I think it's a new record.
So actual arrival time equals status. I don't know why I'm typing this. I should have just copied and pasted it. And I'm going to assume it's actual departure time, but let me see if I can find it in the thing itself, because sure as shooting, if I try to pick it, I'll pick the wrong thing. File arrival time.
When you're done with this, remind me again how FlightAware is going to know to call your scripted REST API.
All right, I'll show you that in a second. Yeah, I'll show you that in a second. Actual
somewhere, now that you've named this thing, you've got a URL or an endpoint to
time.
it. You're going to pass that endpoint to FlightAware. I think that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll shut up then.
File departure time. Yes, actual actual departure time. And this is why I did this. This, gentlemen, is the actual field. Now, what do you notice about those two things?
Actual departure time. No consistency between how they're separating words, for one.
Yes. This is in their API. This is
that triggers my OCD for sure.
Oh, for sure. This is
the underscores in some and not in the others.
This is gonna working with this is gonna freak me out a little. All right,
only way to make it worse is to throw in some camel case on top of it.
Yeah, some camel case and some not. Like half of them camel case and half of them underscore separated.
And how about some with both? Anyway, sorry.
Let's move some into a child object.
All right. All right. So for right now, let's just go ahead and let's just log this and get a feel for what we're doing. Yeah. And I seldom do this. Let's go ahead and do this. I don't usually. I tend to do a lot of concatenation, string concatenations. Let's go ahead and do this thing just because it's different.
Yeah, it's a good example of that. We don't use this too much, and it has been around since day one. Well, day one of the scope debugging.
How many things do I have? So, yeah, let's just do. Actually, I'm just going to log those 3 things. Oh no, there's another thing I want to do, which is there's another important field because we're going to key off of that. It's the type of this. And let me find the thing. Do you know a way to make this wrap? Is there a way to make word wrap?
Put it in a table cell? I don't know.
I don't know.
Summary event code. Event code is the thing I'm looking for. Event code. Okay, event code. All right, so let us get to code. We'll do some logging on this before we do anything else. Let's just do long actual time, actual no underscore departure time. Call that good. Okay, so let us submit that. Let's go ahead and explore this the REST Explorer.
Ooh.
So we're opening the REST Explorer. I do love me some REST Explorer as well. So now I'm going to copy the JSON that we were just looking at.
I love how you can use that UI action to go right to your integration.
Yeah, and note, by the way, it's the post, right? It knows that I'm going to the post. All right, so there's my JSON. And let us just
what you expected. Yep.
Yeah, so this is this is actually easier to see. It was actually because in Evernote it wasn't wrapping. So you see here is the long description we were talking about before. This is that stuff. And actually the short description probably is even better just because it's a whatever. We'll do that. Summary. Blah, 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 blah. And so the other thing I'll send that event code. So it's got a couple like change, and one of them is land or something like that. Flight start, flight end, time change. So we're going to use it, do some logic based on which of these event codes we get. But for right now, we just want to make sure we're correctly parsing it, doing everything. So let's go ahead and send it, confirming it, and boom, got an error. Unexpected token O. Unexpected token O.
So I wonder.
Operator script line 4. All right, let's.
It's in the script itself.
It's in the script.
Yeah, I was gonna say this sounds like it's in our script.
Line
script
4.
line 4. JSON part. This might be. Let's go ahead and check. I may have called this.
How would that freak out on the token, though?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually see where unexpected token O.
So it actually could be coming from the body still. So I think your JSON parse may have worked okay, but what we're seeing is the result of the attempt to parse what you sent it.
Okay, this is probably not it. Let's try it one more time.
Okay. There might be a new line break from your copy and paste.
Oh, I'll bet you were absolutely right. All right. So I'm not even going to bother with that. Actually, let's undo that.
Yeah.
Let's undo that, and let's do, because in my Evernote there is in fact one.
Right.
It's 0342.
Don't forget to save that.
Yeah. Update this. The blue dot.
I love how magically became this is new or needs updating or saving.
Actually, I don't know that is a new line, because if you notice, like if I do one character back, how it's doing that?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a new line in here. I think this is one big splat.
So where's the O? That's the question.
Let us go back to our REST API Explorer. So we're going to be in another one of these guys where this is not debugging the thing we thought we were debugging. Do you guys know off the top of your head, do you know a JSON validator type tool?
Yeah,
there is an online
JSON, like JSON beautifier, JSON validator. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to JSON.
And at very minimum, hopefully it'll put it in a format you can read.
I usually take that first one. That's all I ever type. That's the one.
It's valid.
It's valid. And it's beautiful.
Interesting. So you know what? What actually might be happening is I'm wondering, are we automatically parsing this JSON? So is your JSON parsing?
Oh, I might be double parsing it? Well, let's try it. Let's try it.
I know somewhere we do automatically parse JSON, and I don't know if it was here or not.
Okay. I'm willing to, if so, then more power to it.
Yeah, and I know there's an object that's already parsed, and I can't remember if it's .body or it might be.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, there we go.
And you know what? You know what, guys? I'm doing something extremely crazy here. Why don't I also
just return it?
Just return that.
Oh yeah.
Can I, if I do this string? Will this string also, if I do a string assignment, it will only work in the debug?
Yeah.
Trying to do the.
I
No, I cost myself. All right, so I'm just going to return the same thing. Actually, yeah, let's just return the same thing. And I'm just going to be extremely minimal about this and just.
That works.
Just to verify that we actually parsed it and we're kind of getting what we think we're getting.
So while you're doing that, did you talk about how you got that JSON to begin with?
I used request bin. So, yeah, that's what I did. So I set up request bin, and then I registered my request bin, basically this address as the callback, and then I had FlightAware calling it, and so request bin then keeps track of all the things that get sent to that particular URL, and so that's then I cut and pasted all those out of here.
So that can be a really useful way of saying before you go out there and you try to build out your whole scripted REST API, let's set up a quick request bin just to get something working. You can see what's coming through.
Exactly. Right. Cool. So yeah, so I did that like before even getting ServiceNow involved. I wanted to just see like what happens, what's the actual JSON, how much is it calling, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the things as you're building this out is it's nice to do simple tasks with simple tools, right? As opposed to like building out the whole thing and you're not 100% sure what's happening and what's moving across the wire. And it's like, let's take what's moving across the wire out of the equation. So let's do that. And we should see undefined, 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 undefined. That's
so
not great.
Then I think it might be .data instead of .body, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Well, actually, can you do a control space on that request dot? You should be able to see the
body.
Maybe data is not the thing.
Maybe it's body.data.
That could be.
Body.data.
Yes.
Thank you, Code Complete. Body.data. I've never used body. So this is a true learning experience. I've never used that.
You're done.
Oh, there's more?
Data.long description. Did you want a specific property of the body.data?
Yeah, but I'm assigning that to status. And then
okay. I got you. Yep. Gotcha.
Let's do that. And boom. All right.
Nice.
Undefined, undefined. So I got 2 undefineds. Oh, and you know what? This is now where notice that those are in the flight.
They're in the flight object. Yep.
Right. Which I noticed.
Okay.
I would not have even noticed that from unless we had done this JSON beautifier.
That's
right?
why
because
I love
of
this.
Yeah, because of that big splat that we were looking at before, I just would have never seen it because that, like a one long line of JSON is hard to see.
Yes.
In payment. All right, so let's do that.
I've had people send me arrays of objects of arrays, and they say, "What's my dot notation to read this?" And I throw it at that website, and then I can read it at least.
And closer.
Yeah, we got a time in
Getting there.
We got a time. So we didn't get the first one, which is actual arrival time. Let's go back to here. Actual arrival time.
Actual arrival time is under flight.
Actual. Oh, because.
Oh, there is no underscore.
Denied.
All right.
Interesting.
And.
Well, good thing they're consistent on that one.
Well, yeah, okay. So what was I seeing? All right.
I noticed that on the, I think, planned dates,
Okay.
they had the underscores.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. I take everything back. Sorry for casting aspersions on you, FlightAware. All right. So now we should see. So we should actually see a 0 for that because that is 0 in the data. Because at the point, that was like let's see it was the gate change. That's what this is. Gate change. Flight information has changed. Arrival time has changed, et cetera, et cetera. So at the time that this was taken, the one that I'm using here, it was still in the air, which is why that time is 0. So we should legitimately see a 0 when that thing parses out.
Got it.
Down here, and there we go. Okay, so our REST API is in fact correctly dereferencing our information. So now what we want to do is we want to get a little. So I'm not going to worry about the absolute best way. Again, we want to get it working in the next half hour. We can refactor, and probably like the guts of this would end up in a script include. But what I'm going to do now is we want to get one more thing out of that, which is back over here. We want to get that FA. We want to get that FA flight ID out of this guy, because what we're going to do FA flight ID. What we're going to do is we're going to look up all the flights that have this.
Okay, so basically this would let us then tie it back to
Correct.
the flight that we want.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
So now, when this comes in, and so conceivably, like more than one person might have this flight, and I haven't really thought through the singleton thing. Like, should I only allow for there to be one flight, and then everybody would reference the same flight? I haven't thought through those parts of it. That is an actual concern.
Was that under the flight object? Still, do you need status.flight?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. It was under the flight object. Okay. So now we've got the flight ID. So we're going to do, and I think this is, so now we're going to flight. Oh, goodness. Well, I have to actually type this like an animal, SN. And we want the query to be
script include
FA flight ID.
And is that your actual field name? FA flight ID?
That is my actual field.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
A little better, because that will also drive me crazy. And let's do a while. Now for
once you have all with that flight ID, then you can find out who's on those flights and who do you need to notify.
Correct. So now what we're going to do is we're going to loop through that, and we're going to set our flight. We're going to set our actual end time and our actual start time to those things. Actual end time, actual start time. End time equals arrival time, our actual start time. Probably I could have named my columns better. A lot of times I like to, I would like to do everything to be consistent with the API, which, has its ups and downs. It ends up embedding the idiosyncrasies of the API in your code, but, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, this is the only flight API out there, but maybe you want to call a different API down the road or use a different API down the road. So,
right. In a different situation, that would absolutely be the case. Like, you want to abstract away from, being a complete clone of their data structures and everything. And let's just go ahead and do that. And so, like in fully fleshed version, we might do some error handling and checking, if there's a problem, then we would return it back to the problem and change the status code, et cetera, et cetera. For now, we're just going to do this. And what we actually can even do is let's go back to our flights and let's find one of these ones and find one that's we've got more than one of. This one.
All right, yeah.
We got two of this guy just to verify that we're actually looping and doing what we want. So now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to have to do it over in my Evernote. I'm going to phony this up. I'm going to get my flight ID. And I'm going to put that flight ID in there.
That makes sense.
Then I'm going to re-send this. And there we are. Of course, it's the last place you look. And it's the thing. It's the thing that's wrapping. Okay. All right. So now we're going to resend this, and what this should do is it should update those fields of my two guys here. And let's even go ahead and.
Can you save that record?
Put them on here.
Edited.
Yeah. Oh, let me go and do that before we leave. Okay. So now if we go, I've updated that, and like these are empty across the board. Nobody has anything for anything. Let's go ahead and redo with the REST API Explorer. So let me redo the request. And you know what? I didn't even have to do all that stuff in Evernote, but now I have a record of it. I could have just changed it right here. But okay, so we've got, and again, the 5139. 5139. So this is the one that I'm doing. And there's actually three of them. So we should see three things update when we're done with this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit the button. Yes, we're changing things. It's post, blah, blah, blah. We got a 200, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I refresh the list over here.
Did it work? Did it work?
Did it work? It did not work. 5139. Now, what would be the first thing you guys would do?
Well, potentially debug logs.
Went directly to the logs. Let's see if we see something in there.
At least see if there's an error.
There's that error. There's that debug message I was putting in before.
Okay.
Ooh, complete with live. That's beautiful.
Dudes.
Oh, the time format.
Yeah. I'm putting in an epoch time.
That won't work.
That's not going to do anything. All right. So what we need to do,
it's just a bunch of numbers.
Now I'm going to have to go to.
I think that's what you call wishful thinking.
Absolutely, that's wishful thinking.
Wishful coding.
If only the times would just be handled.
I missed a giant step in here. I was just complaining about the time business. All right, so I need to turn the
order of the world. That's how all times are going to be represented as epoch seconds, and nobody questions it, and it'll all work
for everything except final display to the user. Like everything, UTC.
No, users have to learn to read my time.
No, and I believe can I initialize a glide date time? I can do a set. Oh goodness, I'm gonna have to look at this.
I know there's a set value where you can.
If I do a set value, I believe I can pass. Okay. This is the thing. In fact, I was just doing this the other day. So what I'm gonna have to do is create two different. So I guess the easiest way to do is to just in here, and I want to do this in scope because I want them to. You know what? I'm going to set value. So why don't I just go ahead and scope them out of here? Our end time, new glide date time.
Yeah, right. Because it's always the same value.
Well, no, I'm gonna be doing a set value on them anyway.
Right. But it's not changing with each glide record you retrieve. Is what I'm saying. It doesn't need to be in that loop.
Oh yeah, you're right. I was gonna say even if it was in the loop, you could use the same object because you're just gonna be forcing it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I can just do that out here one time. End time equals end time dot set value UTC. It says UTC, right? Oh
yeah. No, they're different.
All right. Let me go ahead and I'm gonna pull up my script include because I did this in here. I've got to do the parse converter. Yes, I have done this. No, depart time set value. Okay, so I want to do it in the so I can do it in the but I have to do it in the milliseconds,
which
not
is
seconds.
Multiply times 1,000.
R and milliseconds equals. This is getting ridiculous. All right. Now, but it's not even that because I need an int.
So you got to do a parseInt on that.
I got to do a parseInt on this. And this is let's see if this is fingernails on chalkboard to Chuck. You're talking about multiplying times 1,000, or you could do this. This is now for me being the obscurity code cop in previous episodes. This is kind of obscure, right? So this is how I did it before. Like looking at that code, does that even make any sense to anybody but me?
It does.
You are using a string and not a numeric value because if you multiply it times 1,000, you'd have to do it after you do your parseInt.
Mm-hmm.
I think the multiplication definitely makes it a lot clearer what's happening. This isn't ridiculously obscure, but it does make it clearer.
Oh, take the plus out. I notice you're not doing the comma 10 methodology either with the second parameter on parseInt.
Okay.
just to be sure.
Yeah.
And milliseconds.
Out. Ooh.
All right.
Limited
And then,
commenting in our code. I think that's the first time we've written a comment. Why is that one commented out?
Also, let's see. I've got a comment from Jace that he says you can do GDT equals new glide 8 times, GDT.set numeric value.
set numeric value you can do a get. I don't know if you can do set. At least it's not listed up here.
Let me check real quick.
It's not listed in this API doc. It may be an actual API that works, but it's definitely not published in this thing I was looking at.
Got it.
That was actually one of the first things I looked at.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You looked the same place I was.
Start millisecond.
He says it's in the docs. I wonder.
There is
which also means
value in milliseconds. It is in the.
Oh, he said he's
on
unscoped. So it might be scope versus legacy global.
Okay, could be. And certainly I have run into some scope stuff since I've been working on this.
Yeah. Also, just take a moment to raise our beers to the fact that we're actually having a conversation almost in real time with our viewers, which is fantastic.
First time in a while. Welcome back.
So do I want to do set numeric value or set value UTC? I think I want this. And
yeah, I think we're pretty confident that set value UTC is going to do what we want. We can experiment with the other thing at some point.
Set value UTC takes a string date time.
Oh, really?
Sure.
A string format.
One of these guys.
You may want to go with set numeric value.
One of these maybe is.
So the code you had working was just set value, right?
Code that I was working is just set value. Yes, I think set value. I think set value actually has what you call it, like a polymorphic thing, where if the type of that is int, which is one of the things why it has to be int. I think that it's not going to do an implicit int parse. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let's just do set value.
I'm looking at all the places where milliseconds is referenced on the docs. Get numeric value returns milliseconds. Get TZ offset. Set numeric value is milliseconds. A JavaScript number. Hang on. Description. Date and time to use. This parameter may be one of several types. A string, a glide date time object, a Java date object, a JavaScript number.
Okay, so set value does seem to be the thing.
It is polymorphic.
Okay.
Interesting. Cool.
All right, so save that, and let us just try the same thing that we had before. Sending the same payload. Beep. Yes, I do know. And let us go back to flights. And at this time, still not there.
Try a straight set value instead of set value UTC.
I believe I did straight. I thought I did straight set value. So I did that.
You did. Okay, never mind.
So we did that. Start milliseconds.
Yep. No debugging
there? Yes, let us do some debugging.
Start departure. I'm checking your variable matching here because you did some copying and pasting. Just giving a sanity check up there on those
FA. Do. One thing, let's see. Are we actually
in the loop?
Listen, no, I did query.
Common mistake number one.
Actual arrival time. I did the query, gr query, add query, FA flight ID. Yeah, let's just make sure that we have a query and we're gr.fa. All right, we'll do this. Send it and then go look at the logs.
Mm-hmm.
And 1445. So look at that. We didn't.
I see nothing.
So our query is wrong. Yes, something is wrong in our query.
So I wonder.
Hang on. What was that at the end of the log with the comma separated milliseconds?
That is, I think, debug formatting. Because
it's doing an integer. Okay.
It's taking the integer and it's just doing some kind of format on it.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So yeah, let's look at our query. Glide record. So this query is, we're not finding anything. FA flight ID. And let's go ahead and
row count out there just to make sure you're.
Yeah. Let's
do a debug on get row count before you get into the loop.
Here's another question: is the case of a field preserved? And when you have a field name like that, I'm just wondering if we have if it's not actually.
Oh, you know why? That's all right. I can tell you what's happening here is that it's not FA. Yeah, here we go. That is entirely problem. Label. Yeah, entirely problem between keyboard and
over that info icon.
Oh, FA underscore flight.
You asked that before. Is that the
I
name
did.
of your
I
field?
did.
All right.
No. Flip those around.
What? Did I do them backwards?
Yep.
You had the one in the quotes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's the one that has to be underscored. Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to go, I still don't see it, and your variable's wrong.
So what you're saying is I just took it and I made it worse. All right.
I think we need a designated driver on every one of these from now on.
Certainly, I need it in my day-to-day life. That's for sure.
I could have used it a couple weeks ago.
All right. Let's do it again.
There we go. And now we need the same thing down on line 27.
Down on line 27.
Because
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So we can actually see what we got.
So our debug will be right.
And
let's swing for the fences. Let's look at this. All right. Now we are actually looping.
We have the ID.
So if we've got that, then we probably.
Didn't you say we were supposed to get more than one? Oh, okay.
We did.
Those all came out at the same time. Yeah,
we got a couple of them. And look at that. And that's right. That is actually, in fact, correct because that was 0.
With the time zone offset.
So,
yep.
So future work would involve doing some 0 checking because we don't want the 1969s.
Sure.
But so far, that part actually works. Now let us see. I'm going to come back over here. And we might have to do this. So this is, at this point, this is live. Because we're doing this on my employee instance, which I'm doing this because I need a publicly available endpoint for FlightAware to reach. Everything I've ever done before this has been on my local instance, but I needed to be able to hit this.
Do you need to expose that endpoint as public in the syspublic table?
Do I? I don't think I do. Isn't it automatically?
If you want to make it, so I think automatically it's going to require a username and password, but you can mark it inside the scripted REST API.
That's right.
Yes,
you can do it there.
Yeah,
yep, you're right.
In the scripted REST API, I marked it as.
I think it might be on the operation itself.
Okay.
I did this myself once, and I can't remember. It's in there somewhere.
Requires authentication. Yeah.
All right, let's turn that off. All right, now we're going to have to do a little bit of magic. What I want to do is let's we're going to have to go into the API. So first we're going to call these the hard way. Register But in the interest of time, we don't have a lot of time to build this out. So I'm going to do register alert endpoint for FlightAware. Over here, and we're going to register alert endpoint. And this is, I think this one was making me laugh when I was showing you guys this before, where so here's my endpoint. And I'm going to just go ahead and let it implicitly encode it. Address equals this. Ah, shoot.
I think something's missing there.
Yeah, probably it is. Let me. Yeah. Uh-oh. All right. Let me go ahead and do one thing on another screen.
Don't look, everybody. Yeah, I was going to say, other screen, please.
You mean we can't just ask everyone to close their eyes while they watch the video?
Someone's going to have to edit it later and blur that part.
You guys will think this is funny. This will show you how long ago I set this
Oh,
up.
yeah. Expert services. All three of us were on that team together.
At one point,
right.
yes.
So in fact, this is like when I was showing. This is the actual thing I'm looping on, just for curiosity's sake. This is the same. This is the same API. So now I'm going to go ahead and back to register alert. And in fact, if you notice here, this is the call. This is my call to request bin a while ago.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and do that, even though that won't be valid because it's just got everything else the same. So let me go back and get my endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Let me paste it in there. Really only doing that so that I could get the full rest of that. I think it's funny that you have to. It's a required that you include this format type, and the only possible value is JSON post. It won't accept any other value, but it also won't let you admit it.
They're thinking about the future.
All right. So we have registered that as an alert endpoint. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get that flight, which is the one that's going on now, 11.4, the one that starts at 150. Do I have one of those? Oh, don't tell me that's the one flight I don't have. Oh, this is the one. Okay, so I want to register for this flight. I want to register that as my alert endpoint. And unfortunately, because of the timing, I think we may not. We may have to come back and look at this next week. Next time we do this.
Okay.
What I want to do is, register. So now what we want to do is set alert. And in fact, we should have the set alert that I did before in my browser history. Set alert.
Oh yeah, there it is.
All I'm going to do, so I'm going to do nothing but say, so I'm just going to let it do default. So you can limit it down by what kind of alerts I want. There's actually a lot of parameters to this. So let's go look at the doc for 1 second. So you can limit it down. Like I said, I could say I only want specific airport codes, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. You can also use this to turn it off, because you can say here, you can give it the alert ID, and you can say, update an existing one. So we're going to go ahead and just hit this guy saying that we want our endpoint.
No channels specified.
No channels specified. Let's see. Channels. Oh, list of channels. See description for.
Also, maybe those channels are required. Then you have to tell it. Interesting.
I got to go over here and say, what's my tickle style? Oh, this thing. This crazy thing. I'm just going to pass this in again. So basically, I'm going to say, just give me everything. In practice, I probably want to figure out which of those I want and get a little more surgical.
And in particular, because this API charges per call, each of these callbacks
Right.
Webhooks is going to be one call, so you could actually limit it down and say, I only want.
I only want, and let's go back and look at it. I probably only want schedule changes, departure, arrival, diverted.
Mhm.
I don't need filed. I don't even know what the 16 is. And clearly, you notice this? They've got these things which are clearly like somewhere in their compiled. They compiled this. This is a define somewhere in some C code, and then 16.
A numeric.
And you know that there's a bitwise shift, right? This one is like bitwise shift 0, bitwise shift 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one of them 16, and that doesn't have a name. Dudes, I've done this. Oh, and so just to look at this thing now, the set alert result. This is the ID. The thing it's telling me back is that's the ID of this particular. This is the alert ID. That's the unique identifier for me being registered for alerts. So if I want to change that, if I want to go back and say, don't give me all those channels, I would then pass that alert ID and whatever the new information is, and it would update my existing alert ID. So that's the one conceivably, like when we actually hook this up, to where ServiceNow is making this call, conceivably we want to hang on to this because this might be something that we want to know in the future.
Yeah. So, for example, if you registered the wrong flight and you said, "Oh, whoops, I don't want that one. I want to go and cancel it."
Yeah, something in there. So yeah. I've got the workflow. What really makes sense to me, and so I would take what I have just done there and probably put it in a script include, right, where you would say, okay, I want to go and hit, I want to register the endpoint. If it's not already done, I want to do a set alert for this flight ID. And it makes sense to do that, in that same point where I'm looking it up and I know that I have it. It kind of makes sense to just go ahead and register the alert at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, you're accepting that information, and it will just kind of keep on going at that point. So at that point, like from the workflow perspective of setting this up, at that point, you're actually done. Right now, the API, their API, is kind of driving you. You sort of outsource the workflow from here, which I really kind of like.
Yeah.
So originally, what I was going to do was, have this before I knew about being able to register this webhook. I was going to have some kind of complicated workflow that was going to check, every 6 hours until you get, look at the status. You basically be polling the status, and then say 3 hours before you start going to like half an hour, something like that. And this removes all that. And simplifies every bit of that because
no matter when. Yeah.
Right. Now it's completely event driven. So now I don't believe when does that flight? I was picking that one because it actually is in the air right now. 5:43. So it lands in 16 minutes. We can go and see, did we actually get anything on that? We get anything on that webhook? 17. We didn't, unfortunately. So
Which probably just means there haven't been any updates yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So one would think like within the next 20 minutes that there will be some kind of update, where it landed or or got diverted to some other airport or something. But something's going to have happened within 20 minutes or half an hour. So at that point, what we would expect is for that to be called, and then that can be we can leave this on a cliffhanger. How about that? Yes. We're already kind of at the hour point. I don't want to wait around here long enough to to actually see that. So we can kind of leave that there. Like I said, I will probably not be around next week. Let me go ahead and get rid of my screen share. Like unscreen sharing is the hardest part of this. All right, unscreen share, and then I need to unpresent. All right, and so we're back. So at this point, didn't quite make it as far as I wanted to, but we've got some interesting stuff, right? We've got the webhook there. It exists. It does, in fact, correctly parse the information. Like next steps would be hooking, creating script includes to do all that stuff that I did by hand in the browser. We want to be able to register the endpoint. We want to be able to set an alert given that FA flight ID. And then at that point, and those are extremely simple, right? Those are very, very simple calls. And at that point, actually, that scripted REST API is doing the bulk of all the work for this thing. So I think actually that's extremely cool. So The downside is to do the real world testing now takes patience, because I'm waiting for actual flights to actually land and then generate data to push to my scripted REST API.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty cool. That's territory we haven't delved into before. We haven't done anything with webhooks and receiving that information. So highly valuable.
So, yeah, especially because there are a lot of APIs are doing this now. If you look at, Box just rolled out a whole new series of webhook APIs, and more you're going to have these event-driven things, and it's a much leaner way of getting real-time information without doing crazy constant polling.
And like I say, it really makes sense here, because the events in the world exist. The events exist externally, and so why should I have to go and say, did you have an event? Did something happen that I need to know about? When the other thing has that knowledge. So I would much rather just wait for that real world event to happen and then be told about it. So it matches the problem domain of what we're modeling here.
So in the community, we've seen this, and I've got this from customers from time to time. It says, does ServiceNow support webhooks? And my answer at this point is yes, we do.
Yes. If you build a scripted REST API to accept what that webhook, needs, like whatever data it's going to push you, if you write a scripted REST API to handle that data, then yes, it does. Absolutely.
And conversely, we can generate the same type of API when we generate an event.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly could. Right.
We could also be pushing to it, given a webhook endpoint, we could push data out to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We would need to have a registration process that says, when this event happens, what do you want me to do with it? What's your endpoint that you want me to call? And that could be done easy. Maybe that's an exercise we look at in the future.
Yeah, you would do exactly the equivalent of what they did there, right? You would have a scripted REST API to say, tell me your endpoint, and then tell me what you want me to send, and then you send the data. So cool stuff, gentlemen. So like I said, I will probably not be available next week, so it might be a couple weeks, but we'll return to that, and we can kind of look at the results of actual real world stuff, and we can carry this further if you want to. So
looking forward to it.
Sounds like a plan.
Super fun. All right, Dale's Pale Ale. I'm gonna give it a solid 4. My palate is becoming more IPA-ish. I used to not like them much, but they're so ubiquitous that it's kind of hard to avoid them, and I've kind of gotten used to them. So
the pale ale you've got does not, come up and grab your tonsils and say, I'm an IPA. Here's the hops. I like that one. It's easier.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a grocery store IPA, right? That's where I got this from Food Lion down the street. It's kind of like my Sweetwater 420. It's almost the Bud Light of the craft brew world, right? You can get it almost anywhere.
I love some Sweetwater 420 when I can find it around here. The Lagunitas IPA, probably a solid 3.75. Maybe somebody will get mad at me for that, but not my favorite IPA, but not bad.
All right, and good old water. It's
5.0.
Refreshing.
5.0, right?
Refreshing and hydrating.
5.0 or a 0.0 because it's got nothing in it.
All right, last call for you. Somebody want to look at the communities, or not the community, but the YouTube chat? Do we have anything else up there that we want to respond to? If not, we're going to call it a weekend.
I know Jace is really eager to see stuff about daylight saving time offsets, so we'll have to incorporate that into the future.
All right, so let's just take 1 minute and talk about that. I don't know if you guys have a recommendation. Like what I have been the things I've been thinking about are insane, because like some of the ways that you deal with time zones just like aren't available in scoped APIs. You can't do the package call to the Java. You can't get the Java time zone object, which is how you do some of this. Like if you go and you Google on this, which of course I did, many things no longer work in a scoped app, right? You can't do that package call, get the time zone, and then create something with that and get the offset. So
if I heard right, Istanbul is creating some new APIs for the scoped apps that make it easier to go from UTC to the local time, but I don't know that we can still do any arbitrary time zone.
Right. That's the problem. Is we're not talking about the difference between. So prior to the, in most of the use cases that you see out there on the sites, we're talking about the difference between UTC and your instances time. And so correcting for those. And now what I'm doing is arbitrary time out in the world that has to be converted to UTC for it to match up on my FlightAware API. So one of the things I've thought about is just encoding in the, I'm not sharing anymore, but in my airport, making that be a field of the airport is what its offset from UTC is.
Oh, yeah.
So that I know that given a flight from an airport, I can look up and at least convert that to UTC from there.
And then store all your dates and times in UTC internally, like we talked about last time.
Yeah. No, like, yeah. So everything in there is always UTC, because it kind of has to be, right? Because it's just madness, anything else. So what I want to do is, one of the other bits of future work is I want to be able to say, take your standard formats of itineraries that you would get, obviously it would start with Concur for us because that's what we use, so that you could actually, my favorite, an inbound email action, and forward your itinerary and your flight confirmation, and then have it parse all this stuff, create your flight for you.
The willies, there are so many variables with that.
I know. It's going to be so hard, but then you've got all these issues, right? It's like, okay, I'm flying out of San Diego to O'Hare. And now you got to figure out all the stuff at both ends. And like, O'Hare, okay, O'Hare isn't central. And is it daylight savings time then, or is it not?
Yeah.
Or so there is a lot of logic I have to think through on this. But
edge cases on top of more edge cases.
Yes. There will be a lot of I'm going to create a lot of bugs. Like Wally and Dilbert. I'm going to code me a new minivan. Remember that one? That was actually my very favorite Dilbert, where they were going to reward a bounty for every bug fixed. The next thing you see is Wally saying, I'm going to code myself a new minivan.
Brilliant.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I'm no joke. This is now like the key part of my week. I love getting to this. It's the perfect way to go into finish the work week and go to the weekend. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.